So welcome to another episode of the Imperfectly Perfect Podcast, where each week I am joined by some of the world's most renowned faces in the entertainment industry, on the sports field, corporate leaders, and inspirational thought leaders around the world, each sharing their own truths and personal journeys. Today, we have none other than Chezzi and Grant Denyer. Chezzi is a TV producer, YouTube blogger, podcast host, mother, wife, and manager to a husband, Grant, who is a man of many talents. From 2018 Gold Logie winner to motor racing driver to Guinness World record holder, and most importantly, a husband and father. His TV career has spanned 2 decades, which has made him one of Australia's most loved radio and television presenters, and he's hosted nearly every big international TV format: Australia's Got Talent, hosting the 2nd season of Dancing with the Stars, and a special primetime series of the much-loved Family Feud. Firstly, welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks for having us. I really appreciate it. We've been watching your wonderful work from afar for quite some time now, mate. So we're very impressed with what you've done with this campaign. It's spectacular.
Well, thank you. And you know what? To come on with you guys, it's been 4 years since caught up, and I was actually a bit nervous because I was like, there's one reason I called it Imperfectly Perfect, because I'm still bloody imperfect at doing things. And Grant, I was reading recently, you struggle, or you did, with perfectionism. So I was like, this was a guy that turned up to interview celebrities with GarageBand and a laptop and just pressed play and was like, so there you go. But yeah, I just want to say first and foremost, thank you for getting involved, because nobody knew who I was. I reached out to Cheryl first because I'd read your story, Grant, and you believed in what I was saying to you. And I know when you're in the public eye, and you guys have been in for a long time now, you must get inundated. So thank you, because it was the first time when you came on, Grant, and your image was released, I actually saw how powerful this was, and it saved lives. So my question would be to you, Cheryl, is what did you think when a random guy just reached out to you about this premise?
Do you know what? I get a lot of emails from people all the time asking us to do things. And I don't know, something you had in your email just showed how much heart you had behind this campaign. And it was kind of on par with what we were talking about and doing at that time. So it really did fit. But I think the passion that you showed, and when I spoke to you and you had it coming out of every single pore, you were going to take this to the next level. And yeah, I just wanted to help you as much as I could. And that's, kind of how it all started.
It did, and thank you for that. And then I rocked up at the racing car to meet Grant, and at first it was so funny because you must have thought, who's this guy with the camera? Is he paparazzi? Like, who is he?
Well, it felt weird because it was we only had a little window because we live in the country, and and you were prepared to meet us, and I was racing cars in Sydney at that point. So, and normally your headspace is you're a little bit hectic, you're nervous about racing. Cars are expensive if you crash them and you get it wrong, and if you're not in the right headspace. And I wanted to give you the time that you deserved, but I was only sort of fresh to the campaign, and knowing that you just needed some vulnerability, and that's for someone who's spent their entire life pretending to be a perfect person. That's a hard thing to find. I've in growing up in a media career, you end up trying to be everything to everyone, right? You try and make yourself the most hireable person, the most, who's the kind of person someone wants to see on screen. So you make yourself an accumulation of different personality types to try and to be everything to everyone. And then also coming up, you sort of watch other professionals and you go, well, I kind of like how that person goes about their life. Oh, I like how that person goes about their life. And then you tend to be the sum of all of those things that you've learnt. I've never learnt to just be comfortable in my own skin. It's only something that I've just started doing, and you were the first person that ever came along and asked me to do that. So it was not a muscle that was very well used for me. So, but it was the start of something beautiful, starting to learn how I really do tick, and that it's okay to not bloody be perfect all the time. Yeah.
I mean, because your podcast, I've listened to several episodes and I'll talk about it a little bit later on, but the reason why I was saying when I was coming on, you've done so much and you are both so open about every single thing. Being in the public eye, obviously, there's a lot of tabloids, all that kind of stuff. But when you did have that picture taken, and you did openly start speaking, and everybody knows you as the happy guy. What was the response like on both ends?
Well, I think before that, Grant had just before you reached out, I think Grant had got up and you accepted, if I remember, the Gold Logie, and you spoke about the dark times. And I think that shocked the shit out of everybody, because I think that they were expecting Grant was going to get up there, have some smug, smart-ass response. But it meant so much more. And he's just his beautiful personality just shone out, at that moment. And I think that also probably scared Grant a bit, and people weren't quite sure how to take that. They were shocked. So then when your photo came out, and it was kind of like it was really cementing that new found vulnerability in Grant and that new honesty, I think people really started to stand up and respect that. And definitely all the comments that we had were that the photos were so powerful and were so moving that people felt they wanted to share their stories with us. And that was a beautiful gift. And, you started that, because those photos, they were magnificent.
I've never been photographed that way before. Everything I've ever done, when you're making game shows or big formats of, whether it be Australia's Got Talent or whatever, you're dialing the smile up to 11. Everything's fantastic. You're selling a high vibe. Your job, your business is to go big and bright. So I've spent my life sort of doing that, and watching the response from the photos that you'd taken, where that was a scary thing, because you thought, well, I don't want people to think that I'm cracking and falling apart. I still want to be hireable. I don't want to look like, I'm a guy who's falling apart. I still want to be considered, in our industry, a reliable, a guy with good work ethic. Will always turn up and do 1,000%. But seeing the response to your photos was like, I connected with people in a different way, and I got a level of respect that I never had before, because I was just I was a shoe salesman. I was a car salesman, effectively. And then just letting people peer behind the curtain. I think I didn't do it to win any praise or to attract any attention, but I think people realized the human inside of you. And then I realized sometimes you don't need to sell anything. You just need to be you. And I didn't know that before. So that was the first time I'd ever realized that.
Wow. So powerful. Do you think, so we've just been doing this collaborative project called Pay Forward Notes to My Younger Self. If you could tell something to your younger self, if it came to mental health or well-being and holding it all in, what would you tell yourself now, if it's taken you years to come forward and step forward? I mean, especially in an industry where, as you said, I get asked that question when I've been fortunate enough to be interviewed. Was it hard to get people in the public eye to open up? And I said, you know what? It was on one aspect, and then the others, there were certain people who were just like, I can't live a lie no more. It's hard work behind the scenes.
Yeah, it really is. And you came to us in the height of social media, in a state of global perfectionism, where everyone was selling their best versions of themselves. No one was discussing things that hurt or were uncomfortable or embarrassing or shameful. I'd come through a period where I'd made some mistakes. I'd had some big things happen where I'd broken my back, and we had some issues with pain medication and getting off those. And I'd made a ton of mistakes in my life. I'd only ever seen mistakes as something to be ashamed about. So there was a lot of shame with making errors for me. And what I come to realize as I sort of came into a new version of myself is every one of those mistakes that I made weren't something to be ashamed of, but they were just little course corrections that were, okay, maybe I was going down the wrong path. And so I make a mistake, and then I put myself back on track. There are the wonderful gifts of life. They are not tragedies. They're not, I think I released a lot of the shame, when I could start to open up about those many, many things that I'd done wrong, in my life. And I think seeing a photo of me, not photographed like how I would normally be photographed, was sort of like a green light to just let it all out.
I make mistakes all the time. I always have, and a bit of a calamity. So I can't say that, I was very good at hiding them.
My mum calls her Chaos.
Yeah,
Yes, that's her nickname for her daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea.
But I definitely, if I had to tell my younger self something, it would be don't sweat the small stuff, because in my younger years, you tried to make everything line up and life just doesn't go that way. So I've been through some fairly big, sometimes horrific, experiences, but every single one of those things, I can take away some wisdom with me. And looking back now at what I used to worry about, really, it's ridiculous to sweat the small stuff. That's what I would say. And I tell my kids that too.
Equally, you've got self stories with Grant breaking your back and speaking openly about the medication, postnatal anxiety, and then talking about ADHD with your daughter. How, as a couple, for anybody out there, this is personal experience, have you been able to maneuver and go through those challenges as a couple, and then on an external? So Cheryl watching Grant go through it, and then Grant, obviously we have this masculinity, we want to protect, we want to serve our families. How have you managed through those areas together?
Very, very haphazardly at the start.
Well, yeah, our relationship started, it was forbidden love. I was in a relationship, Chezzi was married. So it was naughty from the beginning.
Well, the marriage was ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it had ended. So I have to, stipulate that, which we haven't done before very well. But
no, it wasn't. But
we got together, and then Grant broke his back, and
she became carer straight away. Way too early in an evolving relationship where you're trying to figure out each other's feelings and how do I feel about you? What should we do with this relationship? Bang, she's straight into carer mode now. So she's a nurse, and that. That's not a dynamic that you'd kind of wish on anybody, because it's a long 4-month painful recovery where, the medications make you crazy. The things that I said and did to Chez in that period, I'm still mortified about. But that kind of enmeshed us in this very unhealthy codependent relationship, which we, it took us years to navigate how to get out of that. And so that was not a great start. So we then had to do lots of counseling and lots of work on trying to separate our identities, because I felt like if I wasn't doing everything for Grant, now when I say everything, that means, if we're traveling, I have to carry all the suitcases. If he's feeling unwell, I have to carry him. I have to, it was all about, protecting him. And then Grant obviously lost, a lot of his confidence if I, wasn't around. And it was bad. It was the survival, when we needed to, but we had to spend a lot of time trying to work on our own identities. We still kind of fall into those, codependent moments from time to time, but from there, then I had the, postnatal anxiety. Well, after that, I had a post-traumatic stress disorder, that I was diagnosed with, which Grant, kind of had to experience from the other side, not knowing and not having any idea what was going on. Yeah, that was sort of as a byproduct of her having to, go through all those stages of my recovery and the trauma that I was inflicting on her. As a patient who's going through those pain med situations, that caused her a lot of PTSD. So that only really came to the surface, a few years later. So that was sort of a rebound effect of that period that we also had to cope with. And yeah, it was another sort of tough bump in, a long road.
We've had a lot of tough
We've had some shit go down, brother.
I will say people do need to check out your podcast, It's All True, because I've been listening to some of those episodes and you don't hold back. And one that really stood out to me, to be honest with you, which I'd just like to touch upon, is the one with Dr. Matthew Berg. It was. And he explained about the trauma trapped in our bodies, which is, again, what you're talking about. You had to work through it separate. And then you was talking recently about, obviously, a daughter sailor with ADHD, and then furthermore to yourself. How as parents, through working through your own, was it easier to be able to look at it? Because I know, and I quote you saying it's like your superpower now because you know the triggers and that. How was it dealing from parents?
Well, when Sailor was first diagnosed, I felt like I had failed. I felt like maybe I should have, fixed myself way back, because I always kind of suspected that I was ADHD and I just didn't understand it. And the advice was to trial her on stimulant medication. And as a parent, I really struggled with that. And that I said to Grant, I can't put my daughter on stimulant medication if I haven't tried it myself. This is not right.
Like most parents, we had an issue with the stigma of putting a kid, on.
It just didn't seem, right. I just felt like I was poisoning her, and it, I guess I had to very quickly step up and I had to, look at myself and very honestly look at my shortcomings and what I had to work on before I could start to help her. And that's kind of, what I did.
And it was a game changer. It absolutely was a game changer. It improved our relationship like you would not believe. It sort of helped untangle some of that codependency, because the one thing someone with ADHD does, they hyperfocus, and they hyperfocus on things that they love and things that they enjoy doing. So I became her hyperfocus, through that whole healing process and having to look after me. And so it was good for her to be able to sort of get her own brain back.
And to understand that hyperfocus mentality, why do I get obsessed with, with doing this stuff? And I'm still not perfect, but in knowing that
she turns up places on time now, which is nice.
That's
one of the nice benefits of being diagnosed with ADHD is she doesn't speed for the first time in her life.
Because I was always late.
And she turns up early.
Yeah. And I'm easier on myself as well, because I think I used to probably try to do too much. Well, I still do try to do too much. But some days I say, you know what? It's not going to happen today. I'm tired. Therefore, my ADHD is right at the forefront. And I just need to take that into consideration, and I need to be a bit gentler on myself. And that, as a parent is very powerful in being able to show that to your kids.
The one thing I've noticed about myself is a lot of negative self-talk, like quite horrific self-talk. I'm not good enough. Of course, no one loves me. Why would I? Oh, this is happening. Of course, this is happening because, this always happens to me. Like that can be a nasty trap to fall into. And it's not something I want my children to grow up knowing. So I had to become aware how savage my own self-talk was, to try and rewire that and be a little bit kinder in my own brain, to then ensure that my kids don't do the same. Because, the one thing you want to be is, we know that trauma can be generational, and we can also adopt, we have trauma in our DNA. You want the trauma to stop with you. You don't want that to be passing on subconsciously to your children. So you have to become aware of your own fuck ups and failings and flaws to ensure it stops with you. And we've tried to do that audit regularly. Like, it's not you do it once and then you're done. Mate, you got to be doing that stuff all the time.
Because I think in Sailor's case, what we found is difficult to navigate is that she has ADHD from me, and she gets a bit of anxiety from Grant. So she's got both of those things that, that we both have to be extra vigilant, with how we help her manage that. And it's like holding a mirror up in front of yourself, isn't it?
You can't avoid it. Yeah.
You can't avoid it.
So you deal with it. Yeah.
When I started this campaign, and I was doing it because I lost a friend, I actually think, and I've said the whole way along, that you was talking about wisdom that you learn. This has been an actual journey of me going through emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual stuff as well. And everything that you're saying there, I learned from each person that I talk to. And when you was talking about all the stuff that you've gone through, how deep have you had to go on your own journey? Because that negative self-talk is huge, especially when it comes to social media, comparing, competing, and judging. What certain tools did you use to get yourself out of that?
A lot of, a bit of therapy. Yeah, to be honest, some counseling. I've done various forms of alternate therapies as well. I found a lot of results in kinesiology. I found a trauma specialist and kinesiologist, so who can help, because the problem is there's a lot of trauma stuck in you that you didn't know was there, right? Whether it be something that happened to you as a kid, and it doesn't need to be a massive trauma either. It could be maybe you tried something out as a kid and you got a negative response from an adult, therefore you now make that a black and white rule in your life. Well, if I do this, bad things happen. Okay, so I needed to go back and figure out what are some of those triggers that are occurring in my life now that make me feel bad, and where did they come from? So a kinesiologist kind of helped track some of those. So you discovered, some of the, for instance, I'll give you an example. I had a really bad response to my bosses not if they didn't speak positively to me, it was a crisis in my mind. And I would instantly go to, well, fuck them. They're not with me. I'm going to have to do this on my own. It's me against the world. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. It was me versus the world. And it was such an instant trigger. And I had to go back through my life and try and figure out, where did that start? And it was simply when, I had a dream as a 14-year-old to be a race car driver. And my parents did not see that dream. And in fact, they actively tried to block that dream. And that's when I decided as a 14-year-old, fuck this, they're against me. No one's going to help me. If I'm going to live this dream, then I have to build this dream. And so those kind of triggers, and there's hundreds of those in all of us. You just have to sometimes go back, reset some of those triggers so they don't affect you moving forward in your life. And kinesiology and Dr. Matthew Burke was one of those ways that I found, enormous amount of great gains. I've never looked backwards in my life. I've only ever been a forward focusing guy. What's the next goal? What's the next trophy? What's the next television show? What's the next slap record? What's the next little bit of dopamine I can get, from my Instagram feed? I've had to turn my vision completely the other way. And I've gone further forward in my life because I'm looking backwards and I'm sort of mending all those little bridges and doing those little audits and trying to fix some of those traumas that I didn't realize were plaguing my life. Yeah.
Cheryl, with the entertainment industry, with any industry, these things that we're talking about, these hard conversations, these trigger points and traumas, if no one's ever asked you, what I've learned, it's a huge and hard industry and people aren't ready for it at times. With you guys being in and around that industry for such a long time, what advice, again from personal experience, would you give to anybody who, especially our kids, are looking at these social media highlight reels, they want to go viral, they may get on TV or reality? Would you suggest that maybe if they are getting trigger points, that they sort these out before going into such an industry where everything's highlighted?
I'd say, firstly, don't go into the industry. That's what I would say to my kids. And I say it all the time. I mean, I've always loved TV, always, but it's changed so much now. And there's things that I really dislike about social media, which, I hate that whole showing the highlights reel of your life. And so I often have this strange dance where I try to show, the realness and the rawness, but then I slip up sometimes, and you can't help it. Something good will happen and you'll want to put it out there. But I think it's much easier for us old people who have been around for a long time to put what you see into perspective. If you're coming up through the ranks and you're looking at what you see online and dreaming that, you could have this fantastic career where you're a viral sensation, you're famous, you're worth millions of dollars, you've got, fast jets, and it's not realistic. And the people who do get to those points, they have to, which is very rare, they have to sacrifice more than what I think most people realize. So a lot of the people who I've ever met that do make it to those levels, I would not ever aspire to live like those, because they're lonely, and most of them are very depressed, and they don't want you to see that. And so I guess my advice to anybody coming up through the ranks is always do what you love, not what you think you should be doing, or not what you think everybody else, needs you to be. Just recently, we did a bit of a search with our daughter, trying to show to her that things aren't always what they seem. And we did a search on Grant Denyer net worth. Yeah.
Put in any celebrity name and
it comes up with their net worth. And we laughed so hard, and we've just actually mentioned it in the last podcast. Like one said $30 million or something, we're worth. Grant flies a private jet to work. We work from home at the moment, so we don't even know.
I have no job, and we have a ton of debt.
We live on a farm, like we drive a tractor.
We eat our own eggs for survival.
It was listed,
It looked like an official. It looked official as.
And the scary thing is that it wasn't just one website that had that information. There was others where they had backstories created, and none of it was factual.
Wow.
And yet and there would be people who would look up, they'd look up, and I know that they look up to Grant and I, but say they look up to Grant and they think, I want to be a television host on TV. Okay, well, how much does he earn? What, let's try and put it into perspective, because when they're young, that's what they think, life is all about.
That's the measure of
money
success.
And being famous. Okay. And I hear it from all my, my kids' friends now. They all want to be on YouTube because they all want to live that lifestyle. And it's not reality. And it's really scary, because at some point, these big dreams, that people have, when they realize that it's not reality, or maybe they get kind of like a bit, messed up and a bit lost in the whole translation, they're going to fall. They're going to find, I just think that when reality catches up with them, it's going to be scary.
Well, see, everyone can be famous now. Like this is where, you started this off saying people like us, anyone can be famous now. Like we are in an industry, but it's if you've got a YouTube account, you could be bigger than me easily overnight. That's no dramas. If you could be successful on Instagram and have, tons and tons and tons of followers. It's not exclusive to anyone in the entertainment industry anymore. And that's what scares me, is because if you go, I want to go into the entertainment industry, you sort of adopt, some certain rules, and there's some exceptions you make. But now our daughters could be enormous just by making funny videos on Instagram, yet they're more exposed to the negativity of popularity and fame and comments and trolls, and they're underdeveloped in that. They don't have a thick skin. They don't have a coat of armor, or they're not made of Teflon where everything slides off, because they haven't made the choice to go into the game like we have. So I think it's a way more difficult period now for kids than it is for us, in the industry.
And they're all fighting to one up each other.
Yeah, there's a race to be louder, bolder, be more daring, say more controversial things. So.
And they don't understand, I don't think, the long-term fallout sometimes with, exposing yourself online. It's there forever.
Yeah, I recently had this amazing guy on. He was called Taylor Holder, and he blew up on TikTok. Billions of followers, viewers. He lived in this thing called Hype House. I'm not cool enough. I'm old, so I didn't know what it was. He explained it. And basically, it's these TikTokers that get hundreds of thousands of dollars, all this, that, and the other. And then apparently something went through cancel culture, and basically everyone just turned on him, and his mental health just incredible episode. But it just shows you that our kids think that. And someone always once said to me, he said, think about it, like if someone dropped $1 million on you for IPC, would you be ready? I was like, I think so. And they was like, would you know how to make it sustainable? Would you know how to this, and this? And at the time I'd have gone, probably not. So you're not ready. So if fame suddenly dropped on you, would you be ready? And all these kids are going, yes. And then he basically turned around and said, so what if you went viral for the wrong reasons? If you've not got a support system? I was like, wow. It's just we don't think about it that way. So I suppose with everything you've both gone through, one of my main questions I ask everybody is, what does imperfectly perfect mean to you?
Oh, that's Grant and I, imperfectly perfect. That's pretty much because he was always such a perfectionist and I was always, I was always imperfect, but I was okay with that.
It's a really good question. It just means warts and all. It means you're loved for your faults as much as you are your successes. And it's all part of the rich tapestry of becoming who you are. Yeah, I think
it means that there's no such thing as perfect.
No. And that's, I watched my daughter go, well, do I really want to go in long jump? What if I'm no good at it? You go, darling, just have a go. The courage to have a go and fail will give you the greatest experiences of your life. And I'm guilty of this, if you will only attempt things in which you are going to be amazing at, then you are blind to the thousands of incredible opportunities that could flood in from the sides that you never expected. Like, that's the good stuff. Like, just because your eyes are on one thing doesn't mean that should be the only thing you ever do. And, I wish my daughter, and hopefully she does, has the courage to explore and experiment and try things, even if you're going to be hopeless at it, because that's where the gems are in life. That's where the universe will surprise you the most. Don't have the blinkers on.
Yeah. Imperfectly perfect it says to me, just, be yourself.
It is. I've led it through this whole campaign and look where it's gone. And people go, how did you do it? And I'm like, by my bloody imperfections. I just straight ahead. I'm like, now it's got you guys on, some of the biggest names in the world. And they're like, how did you connect? And I was like, messaging on Instagram. And there's like, what? That actually works. I'm like, well, you never know if you don't try, do you? So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you again 4 years ago for taking a chance on this guy that nobody knew. For making a difference, because it did show me the first time the power of imagery that can save lives. So yeah, on behalf of me, on behalf of Imperfectly Perfect campaign, thank you so much, guys.
Well, pleasure, mate. Look, to be honest, I felt like I was part of the problem. I felt like I was the one who's pushing positivity so hard that is unrealistic in this life and this world. And I felt bad for doing that to people. I didn't feel like I could fix that. I could see that you had the solution to help fix that. So it was a privilege to be a part of that. So I feel like I've unwritten some past wrongs just by being involved in this, mate. So thank you for the opportunity.
You are welcome. And where can people find out more about you and what's coming up? New season of the podcast out, or what's next?
Yeah. Well, we only realized yesterday when we were recording that we just keep rolling over seasons. I don't know why we have such short seasons. So
it sounds impressive. Oh my God.
There was actually an episode, I think I think it was you, Grant, and you was like, is it a season? Is it a series? And when somebody came onto IPC, there was like, what season you on? I was like, seasons? I was like, I do one every single week. I was like, it was like, you can have a break, I'm like, why?
I know. Well, it was quite annoying because we should have just done it that way.
Well, we didn't think it was going to last very long, so we thought, let's count the episodes.
Yeah, and now we keep getting confused. We don't know where we're at. But you can find the It's All True podcast with Grant and Chezzi Denyer, where you find all your podcasts. Yep.
Do you think we get better at saying plugging our own thing?
We're really good at plugging ourselves, aren't we? We're on social media. We've got websites, but we couldn't tell you what the URLs are because we haven't updated them for forever.
I'll get you to send them to me and I'll post them when the episode comes out.
No, we're just thrilled to be able to, finally connect on your podcast, because we're so impressed with what you've done. And I can't believe it's been 4 years. I mean, it feels like you've been pushing this for 14 years. Just it must be your full-time. It must be your full-time gig. How do you have time to live
this is the
outside?
thing. Like, I don't know if you ever knew, I left my career in fitness when I gave it a go, and I jumped in construction to make it happen. So I was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, getting home, spending time with the wife and kids. Then I was learning how to do PR, marketing, networking, sending messages to you guys, everyone else. And it started rolling. But I was doing that for 2 years, and everyone's like, oh, you've got this big team. I was like, yeah, me, myself, and I. And I've lived IPC, where people think on an external, all these celebrities. And I always say to people, I've kind of seen it from everyone's angle. So I've emptied my pockets at time. And someone said to me, you realize what's happening? You've been shown how you can help those people. And on the flip side, I started seeing people come to me going, Glenn, can you connect me with Grant? Can you connect me with, can you do this? Can you do that? And I was like, who wants to know Glenn for Glenn?
Yeah.
So, and then someone said to me, you know what's happening? Now you're seeing it from everyone else's side, that they don't. And how you guys go through an industry like that is one of the hardest things. And I said, never wanted to be a part of it, but it would make me go even further. Because it messes your head up, like mentally, emotionally, all that kind of stuff. And you have to have a strong support network around you. And that's, IPC on an external has continued blowing up. I'm grateful. Behind the scenes, it has never been easy, but it's made me who I am today. So I'm grateful for it. You learn lessons, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
Keep up the good fight, mate.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, what you're doing is remarkable. And I still remember getting a message from you where you recorded a voice message to reply to me, and you're on a treadmill. And I was so impressed.
Still the same.
Because
like
you were not laughing. And when you were talking, you were like, oh, I'm on a treadmill running. And I could hear the and I was thinking, oh my God, this guy is fit as. Because if I got on a treadmill and I was trying to record my voice,
he's all panting.
it would be.
Is she on a treadmill, or is she doing adult duties here?
And then you'd hear like, boom, as I fell off. So kudos to you. Yeah, remarkable.
It's my time. It's how I got in touch with people. Voice notes. I'm like, if people are going to hear who I am, they need to hear my voice, because you guys get approached all the time. So again, thank you for everything you guys doing, and thank you for your advocacy and sharing stuff when it comes out. You always have done. Thank you, guys. Until next time, I just want everybody to remember, keep having the hard conversations, because it's the hard conversations that save lives.